Hello everyone, this is Varun Mansal, the host of today's show, and I think that till now you people must have got a very high level idea of Azure and its services. So without any further delay, let's begin with the day 3 of our AZ-900 bootcamp, and let's finish our journey of this 3 days bootcamp where we learned about Azure and fundamentals of Azure basically, and very basic skills about the Azure and its portal. So, without any further delay, I would like to invite Saurabh Kundu sir, who is a ATEX Azure certified and a Microsoft certified trainer, to teach us about the in-depth knowledge of Azure. Over to you, sir.
Yeah, hi everyone. Welcome again. So today is the third day. So we will learn few more things today. We have covered most of the things on the last 2 days. So without any delay, let me start presenting my screen. Okay. So is my screen visible?
Yes, sir. Your screen is visible.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. Okay. Okay. So let me start. So today is day three and the last day from my end. So let us begin the topics. So first of all, we will cover some basic network security features which is you need to understand uh, if you are creating the virtual machines and virtual networks. So let me start with first Azure firewall. So everyone has firewall, right, in your own personal computer. So what is its job actually, right? So it prevents some attacks from the networks, some viruses, trojans, malware, and many other things. So every day it blocks those unwanted network related activities and protect our machines, right? So similarly, Azure firewall is a firewall provided by Microsoft Azure for protecting the resources which are in Azure, right? So Azure Firewall is a managed cloud-based network security service that helps protect resources in your Azure virtual network. So whatever resources are present in your Azure virtual network, Azure Firewall will give protection to those. What it will do, it will monitor incoming and outgoing network traffic and decides whether to allow or block specific traffic based on defined set of security rules, right? So some security rules will be there. Based on that, it will filter the traffic both ways. It might be incoming, it might be outgoing. Based on the security rules, it will either allow or either block. Simple things. It also happen in your own machine as well whenever you are installing some firewall. So Azure Firewall is a stateful firewall. A stateful firewall analyzes the complete context of a network connection, not just individual packet of network traffic. So it will actually analyze the whole thing, not packet by packet. It will try to understand the complete context currently whatever is coming in your network and will try to understand whether you need to allow or block it based on the defined set of security rules. So simple things, nothing complex. So here you can also see this diagram which is present in Microsoft site. So this is basically a firewall. So here your virtual networks are there and from where the traffics are coming. So based on that, it will either allow or deny, right? So it's simple diagram. So in Azure, if I go back to the portal, this firewall needs to be assigned in virtual network. Okay, so if you go again, how you will go? If you will go like this, virtual networks. So if I go to this one, you can see on the left hand side, quite a few properties are present. Here also you can see few of the things are present here, such as DDoS. I will come to that. Azure Firewall, peerings. We have already looked into those. Security, private endpoints, and in the left side also those are present. So if I go to firewall, currently no firewall is added. So you need to click here. I will not create a firewall because it will need some configuration. I am just showing you how you can do this. The in-depth thing is not required. So here you need to provide suppose firewall A. You need to give one location again, as you know that you have to provide a region. You need to select the SKU for that. You need to select either basic or standard or premium. Based on that, you need to select some policies. Okay, so based on that, you will give some policy name and it will get assigned. We are selecting some basic and we are again selecting the East US part. You need to provide the virtual network name where your firewall will actually work. So you need to fill this up. You need to provide some address spaces. These are network related things. Also need to specify some subnet, public IP address, because it will be coming from public end, right? From web the traffic will be coming. So somewhere it needs to be placed where it will try to detect whether this packet needs to be allowed or not from the external public sources. So in this way you can configure a firewall. Okay, from here you need to go. So once this firewall is actually configured, so from here, so these two VMs are currently within this network. So whenever anyone will try to access these VMs, they need to pass through those firewalls because these are the resources currently in the this virtual network. So in this way, you can define some policies based on which this traffic will be monitored and either blocked or allowed. Okay, so this was firewall. Next is Azure DDoS protection. So what is DDoS? That is distributed denial of service attack. So what is that? Distributed denial of service attack attempts to overwhelm and exhaust an application's resources, making the application slow or unresponsive to legitimate users. So at times you also feel like in your personal machine as well, sometimes if your antivirus is old or you do not have any antivirus or no firewall is there, sometimes it happens, right? Everything is fine, suddenly your application has hanged or you are not able to do anything. It doesn't mean that it always there will be attacks. It might be due to some other reasons as well. But if this attack happens, this type of slowness or unresponsiveness happens to the legitimate users. Okay, so it can target any resource that's publicly reachable through the internet, including websites. So if you're connected to internet, anytime this type of attack can happen to your resource which are publicly reachable. So Azure DDoS protection helps protect your Azure resources from DDoS attacks. Okay, so the DDoS protection service helps protect your Azure applications by analyzing and discarding DDoS traffic at the Azure network edge before it can affect your service availability. So at the network edge itself, it will try to analyze and discard if some DDoS attack is there. Okay, it will not reach up to your service. So it will identify the attacker's attempt to overwhelm the network and blocks further traffic from them, ensuring that traffic never reaches Azure resources. Legitimate traffic from customers still flows into Azure without any interruption of services. So legitimate traffic will still be coming, so that there should not be any issues. But if something related to DDoS is happening, this will protect from that. Okay, so you can see how it is happening actually. So this is again this picture is taken from Microsoft site. So right hand side you can see within virtual network their application gateway, load balancer, VPN gateway, web app service, whatever resources are present in Azure, anything can be there. And attacker is trying to attack these applications by overwhelming the traffic. So here this Azure DDoS protection comes into play. So if I go back to the portal again, same thing, we virtual networks. Here again you will have that option. From here also you can go. So if you go to DDoS, this one, I have enabled it while I was configuring the virtual network. You can also disable it, or by default it was disabled. You can keep it or you can enable. You need to select some plan. Okay, so by default you just need to give some name, and it will create some plan here. So once you create this protection plan, it will apply to all the resources of your subscription in this manner. Okay, so here by this method you can create the DDoS protection by coming here. Okay, so you can just check it from here, and there are different documents are also available. So from here also a few things you can understand. So this was DDoS. Let me move into next one. Now this is very important thing, network security groups. This concept is very important. So Azure firewall and Azure DDoS protection can help control what traffic can come from outside resources, outside sources. A network security group enables you to filter traffic, network traffic to and from Azure resources within an Azure virtual network. Okay, so you can think of NSG as like an internal firewall. Doing so will give the company an extra layer of defense against attacks. So at times we already have seen while we were creating the virtual machine. I will again go to that portion. We need to add some rules, inbound rules, outbound rules. Based on that, you are able to access your virtual machine. Okay, so I will again go back to that page. And NSG can contain multiple inbound and outbound security rules that enable you to filter traffic to and from resources by source and destination IP address, port, and protocol. So it can contain multiple rules. Okay, and it can filter based on IP address, port, and some protocol, HTTP or TCP or UDP. Based on that, it will actually enable you to filter. Okay, so when you create a network security group, Azure creates a series of default rules to provide a baseline level of security. You can't remove the default rules, but you can override them by creating new rules with higher priorities. Okay, so let me go back to the portal. If I go to virtual machine, go to this one. If I go to networking, you can see something is coming up here, right? Network security group. Okay, you can also create separately and can use that here as well. Okay, so you can see some entries are there. So what are these entries, right? So deny all inbound. So whatever is coming up inside, by default everything is denied. It's by default. And allow Azure load balancer inbound. So if some load balancer is there from source load balancer, so it will be allowing that, because load balancer will try to balance the load, so it needs to access this virtual machine. Same thing for allow VNet. So for virtual network also inbound. You can see now RDP. So why RDP? Because we have created the virtual machine, a Windows virtual machine. So whenever you will be connecting to Windows virtual machine, you will be doing that using remote desktop protocol, right? We actually saw this yesterday. Connect RDP You will download the RDP file and you will try to connect. So if this is not allowed, you will not be able to connect the machine. Okay, you need to allow this. Now if I go and delete this, you will not be able to access this. Why? Because you are by default denying all the inbound traffic here, right? And if you see, I have given a low number. So if you give some higher number is denying this, and if you are giving some low number allowing this, this low number will get higher priority. And again on top of this, if I give some 299 or 100 like this and again make it deny, so again it will be denied, it will not allow because it will be of higher priority compared to this. Okay, in this manner you need to set some rules. So whenever I need to add some rule, I need to click here. You see here there are few things we need to provide. So source any means from wherever, whatever it is coming up, it will try to analyze that traffic. You can be specific with IP addresses. So whatever the port is coming up, star means it will be coming from all. Actually you can see provide an asterisk to allow traffic on any port. So any port and any destination. Service can be of different types, right? It can be an HTTP, HTTPS, RDP, SSH. Based on your requirement, you need to select, and then you can select the destination port range and any protocol from here. Okay, and based on that, you can give some name and you can add that rule. So once the rule gets added, based on that rule and this priority, it will work. Okay, and these are all inbound port rules. So similarly, you can specify the outbound port rules as well. Okay, so again same thing you need to do. It is for the outbound part. Again same set of things are there. You need to select the source, destination, those port address and these things. Okay, so by this way you can actually manage this network security group, that what type of filter you need to allow to an Azure virtual network and what type of filter you need to block. So basically it is working as an internal firewall, right? So it's an extra layer of protection. So here are application security group, load balancing, you cannot also add there. And if you go to separately security groups, you can see whatever I have created is present here. So this one is actually same thing, right? This is used in that VM. So network interfaces, nothing is associated as of now. So by this you can just play around with this. Okay, so this was network security group. Now let us move into the next part, that is Azure identity services. So from the name itself you can understand it will play some role for identification purpose. Okay, first of all let us you might know all of this, but let us just review these things because these are important. So authentication versus authorization. Okay, so what is authentication? Authentication is the process of establishing the identity of a person or service that wants to access a resource. It establishes whether the user is who they say they are. So whenever you are entering something credentials, passing the authentication process, right? That user X has this user ID and this password and entering into the Azure portal or somewhere else. So user X is actually user X, not user Y trying to log in as an user X. So that part is the authentication process. And authorization is the process of establishing what level of access an authenticated person or service has. It specifies what data they are allowed to access and what they cannot, what they can do with it. Okay, so once you are authenticated into a system, so now you are the genuine user, right? But all users should not have access to all the things, right? So some set of authorization needs to be given. right? So suppose there are three applications, one, two, three. User X cannot just access everything. So he needs to be authorized to access suppose only application 1. So he cannot access application 2 or 3. So some other users might be eligible to access those applications. So that is part of the authorization, whether you are allowed to access some specific resources or not. So this difference you need to understand. There might be some questions coming up if I remember. So you just need to understand the concept. So next one is Azure Active Directory. So you already are aware of these things, Active Directory, I think. So Azure Active Directory, that is we also call as Azure AD, provides identity services that enable your users to sign in and access both Microsoft Cloud applications and cloud applications that you develop. Okay, so it will provide you the identity services, means which will enable your users to sign in and those things. Let me actually first go you in this portal. You can type Active Directory, Azure Active Directory. So this is the place from where you need to manage your users and whatever, manage your groups or some external users you need to allow to access your application. So these things you can manage from here. So let us first complete the slide. Azure AD helps users access both external and internal resources. Okay, so it will manage the access to both the external and internal resources. So what are the external resources? Those can be Microsoft Office 365, Azure Portal, and other software as a service applications. Internal resources can be apps on your corporate network and intranet, along with any cloud applications developed within your organization. Okay, so if some questions come that what type of external resources Azure AD helps user to access, so you can understand that applications which are in corporate network are internal resources, and SaaS, Azure Portal, and 365 is their external resources. So Azure AD access both, or it might come such as some radio button might come for a question. So Azure AD helps user access only external or only internal or both. So this type of things you need to remember. So Azure AD provides single sign-on. So nowadays we do not need to provide whenever you are using some. Suppose you are if you are using some applications, maybe you do not need to provide your credentials again and again. You provide your credential once, your identity is verified. Now based on that, your identity, you will be given accesses to other part of the applications if you are opening on the same browser. Okay, so this provides single sign-on features, and single sign-on enables you to remember only one username and one password to access multiple applications. A single identity is tied to a user. So user means a single identity, which simplifies the security model. As users change roles or leave an organization, access modifications are tied to that identity, which greatly reduces the effort needed to change or disable accounts. So suppose you are an employee of an organization, and already some pre-configured set of roles has been created for you, you do not need to do anything. Automatically all access will be removed. So these type of things are very helpful to manage these scenarios. So let me go back to the portal. So here Azure Active Directory, if I might not have access to all those things because some premium account is also required. So whatever access I have, I will show you. So if you go to users, you see here you can create new users. So I have already created 3. This is my by default created. I have created other two. So from new user you can create a new one. So here you need to give some username, uh, some first name, last name, or some groups you need to assign. Once the groups are created, some role is user, so you can change the role also, right? From here there are predefined roles available. So these things you need to understand, that which role has what, means what type of access these roles have. Not all roles means can, suppose an owner can do whatever he wants, a contributor can create, a reader can only read. So you, if you give by mistake the one whom you need to give the reader, you give contributor role, then he can do anything, right? He just need to read. So you need to understand the purpose uh, for which the user is given the access. So based on that you need to give that role. Okay, so now you can give some job title, department, company name, etc. So in this way you can create a new user, or you can invite a user as a guest. So suppose a person is not a direct employee of your organization, but you need to give some access to that person. You can just invite him. So a mail will be triggered and he will accept, and based on that, that user will be created in this, for that application. So similarly, from here also you can download all the users and those things, and you can also delete, you can also password reset. Basically administrators use most of the time these things, right? The Azure Active Directory part. So groups also, you can create a new group. So group type is security or Microsoft 365. You can give group name. You can give some membership type. You can give some owner of the group. No members selected. From here you can select members. So if I give, I have already created this user. You can see it is coming up. So if I select this, it will get added to this group. So in this way you can create different groups by assigning those members to that group, and then providing some accesses to or roles to that group, so that those roles automatically get assigned to those member who are the members of the group, basically, right? So these are different options also present here. You can go through them. uh, there is one thing. We go to John. Edit properties. From here also you can do different things. I'm looking for something else actually. Okay, so settings. Yeah, from here also you can manage different things, right? So whether users can register applications, whether user can tenant, create tenants, those things you can also manage from here, right? And also, if there are some external identities with whom you want to collaborate, from here you can do those things. So basically you can manage your users, groups, roles, and whatever responsibilities you will be giving. Based on that you will be giving roles. So these all things you can manage from this active directory. Okay, so you can also see whatever the roles are present in the system, as we already have seen. So in this way, whatever the roles are present, you can assign those to users. So basically the summary is, it will allow you to manage the users, groups, and everything, repeating the same thing and once again. So for that reason, you can use this as your active directory. Okay, so now let us come into few concepts. Whenever you will be creating those users, multi-factor authentication is not enabled in my subscription. For that, premium subscription is needed. You can check with that. So you're already aware of that. What is multi-factor authentication is? It's a process in which users are prompted during the sign-in process for an additional form of identification, such as code on the cell phone or a fingerprint scan. So everywhere it is happening nowadays, nothing new. So you can also actually configured this for with from Azure Active Directory. So Azure AD multi-factor authentication works by requiring two or more of the following authentication methods. So pass it can be a password or some trusted device that cannot be duplicated like a phone or hardware key or biometrics like fingerprint. So this type of multi-factor authentication you can enable for a user. Okay. So next is conditional access policies. These concepts you need to understand for exam because there might be some questions coming up based on this. So conditional access policies at the simplest are if then statements. If a user wants to access a resource, then they must complete an action. Example, a payroll manager wants to access the payroll application and is required to do multi-factor authentication to access it. Conditional accesses bring signals together to make decisions and enforce organizational policies. So what type of thing is this? There are certain amount you can see signals, right? Based on that you need to make decisions, and based on that you will enforce it or not. You will just understand if then statements. It happens, right? Whenever you are logging into your Gmail account from some other device, you get a notification, right, in your mail that your mail has been accessed from a Windows machine or this machine. So these are actually some checkings are going on, right? So suppose your application has been accessed from a location where you normally do not stay, some 1,000 miles away. So then you will get a notification, or you will get a extra OTP or password like that. So this type of conditional access you can configure. Based on that, that user will be accessing the application. For example, a payroll manager wants to access the payroll application and is required to do multi-factor authentication to access it, right? So these things you need to understand. Based on certain criteria, you need to provide some extra information to validate. So common signals that conditional access can take into account when making a policy decision includes the following signals: that user or group membership, IP location information, device, application. So if you are logging in from some other device, okay, normally you are using one device, but someday you are accessing the same thing from another device. So some notifications will come. Okay, so real time and calculated risk detection, Microsoft Defender for cloud apps. So these are different things you need to check. Okay, so you need to understand this concept. Based on that you can answer a few questions, right? Okay, so this was conditional access policies. Now let us move into Azure governance strategies. First comes role based access control. So we have been speaking about the roles for quite a few times. So what is actually role, we need to understand. So Azure role based access control helps you manage who has access to Azure resources, what they can do with those resources, and what areas they have access to. A role assignment consists of three elements: security principle. So what is security principle? It is an object that represents either a group or a user or a service principle or a managed identity. So it's normally we say as a security principle. You can assign a role to any of these security principle. Based on that, the rest of the things will happen. So next is role definition. A role definition is a collection of permissions. It's typically just called a role. A role definition lists the actions that can be performed, such as read, write, and delete. Okay, you can see owner, contributor, reader, backup operator. There are so many built-in roles present. Okay, and you can also create some custom roles as well. So see how this is defined. Contributor actions, he can do anything. Star. Not actions mean whatever he is not allowed to do. So you can mention in this way: delete, write. Data actions, not data actions. These are blank assignable scopes. So in this way you can define your, these roles are actually defined. So you just need to select whether you want to give a contributor role or owner role like this. So let us go back to this one, virtual machine. I go to virtual machine, each and every resource you will see that some access control option is there, right? If you go to role assignment, There is no roles assigned as of now. So you need to add from here. So add a role assignment. So if you are going here, you can see owner. So what owner actually can do? It's grant full access to manage all resources, including ability to assign roles. Contributor cannot assign roles but can do rest of the things. Reader can only read. So based on that thing, you need to select. So suppose I am selecting one contributor. Next. So who are the members of this contributor roles for this VM? So from here you can select, right? See, these are getting populated. So maybe I can select this, again this. I have selected these two members who are given the contributor role. So what is contributor role? Apart from assigning roles in rollback, he can do anything else. So these two members will have that permission on this VM. So now if it is done, next I will just assign these things. So from now onwards, these two members will can do whatever the contributor role will permit uh, to do those activities for this VM. So in this way we assign the roles. Okay. So next is scope. So in Azure, you can specify a scope at 4 levels: management group, subscription, resource group, resource. So I just did it on the resource level, VM. Okay, you can do it similarly on resource group, subscription, or management group, right? So scopes are structured in a parent-child relationship. You can assign roles at any of these levels. You can see these are the 4 levels we already discussed. So these are the scopes. So now if we see end to end, what we will see? So these are the security principle: user, user group, service principal, managed identity. This is a role which has been, you need to select whether it's owner or contributor or reader or whatever else. Scope is whether it is at subscription level or management group level or resource group level or resources. So this one, what is done? So there is a marketing group, this group, who has been assigned contributor role on this pharma sales resource group. You can understand, right, how this thing is happening. So this marketing group will have contributor role on this pharma sales resource group. So as a whole, you can understand. So whatever is there, it's on a single picture only. So this is actually how the role based access control works. Okay. So now let us move into the next one, resource lock. It's an important concept. So let me go back again to the VM. So resource lock prevents resources from being accidentally deleted or changed. You can apply locks to a subscription, a resource group, or an individual resource. You can set the lock level to cannot delete or read only. So you can understand, cannot delete means authorized people can still read and modify a resource, but they cannot delete the resource without first removing the lock. So read only means authorized people can read a resource, but they can't delete or change the resource. So read only means only like that, right? He can read but cannot do anything else. So applying this lock is like restricting all authorized users to the permissions granted by the reader role in Azure RBAC. So if I go here, if I go inside this VM, I am checking at the resource level. So if I go to lock, you can lock this resource by selecting maybe lock 1 I will give. So if I am giving a read only type, okay, so if I give this, so now you cannot modify anything on this VM, whatever is present. Okay, so whatever is present, you have to go with that. You cannot modify anything on this VM. So if you want to remove this, just delete it. So now if you do not want to allow anybody to delete it, then you need to select this one. Now you can modify, but you cannot delete this VM. So in this way, you can give locks at the resource level or resource group level, whatever is there, based on your requirement, right? So this is resource lock. Next, I am coming into Azure policy. So Azure policy is a service in Azure that enables you to create, assign, and manage policies that control or audit your resources. So policy means what? you understand, right? You will enforce this policy. Based on that policy you have to work. You understand this statement, right? So policy basically for Azure is a service that will enforce some different rules. Okay, maybe rules might be that you cannot create any resources on this region. On Asia Pacific region you cannot create any resources, you can only create resources on US, or vice versa. So these rules you need to select in the policy, uh, on resource group or resource level or subscription level, based on your requirement. So Azure policy enables you to define both individual policies and groups of related policies, known as initiatives. You can create, you can select also set of policies together as an initiative and can just assign that instead of going through one by one policies. Azure policy comes with built-in policy and initiative definitions for storage, networking, compute, security center, and monitoring. So you will have all those built-in policies on these topics. Azure policy evaluates your resources and highlights resources that aren't compliant with the policies you have created. For example, allowed locations policy definition specifies the location into which all resources must be deployed. If a different location is chosen, deployment will fail. So in this way, you will get some defined policies. We will see that in Azure portal. So on definitions, you will see I already kept one open here. So for policy, you need to go again by this one, policy. Okay. So here you can actually see that graph, that what are compliant and what are non-compliant. Okay. So 5 are non-compliant, 10 are compliant. Based on that, you will see this graph. Okay. So this is the only currently assigned. It's non-compliant as of now, 0 out of 5. Okay. So if you want to assign something, it's a definition one. So these are all the policies available, built-in policies, or these all are available, all categories. For all categories, these are all policies available. So if you go inside it, you can see here how this policy is actually defined, right? Policy rule, everything. No assignment is done for this one. So here you can check these things, that what are the policies available. For assignment, you can assign this policy. Suppose we want to assign that location one, what is defined. So here scope will be, I'm selecting the subscription. Here your scope will be maybe this resource group, right? In the resource group, we will assign this policy. So now the policy definition, there all those predefined will be there. Let us give as location, we can search it, and we will select allowed locations, right? For this resource group, what are the locations allowed? Means for this resource group, in which locations you will be allowed to create the resources. So if I go to next, you will see that some option is coming up with all the resources. Okay. So now suppose you will only create resources such as railways, okay, and you can give some messages what will be displayed and those next. Now if you create, a policy will be created. It will take some time, it will not reflect immediately, it will take some minutes. I think around 20 to 30 minutes it takes. I'm not sure about the latest timing, it normally takes like that. So now what happened, this policy is placed for this resource group, right? So this list of allowed is only available for this one. So now if I go and try to create, I'm not sure whether it will just check it now. I think it takes some time. Let me check then. So here You can see it's still not reflecting. It will take some time. Okay, so anyhow, this is the concept of policy. So in this way you can enforce policy at resource level or resource groups, so whatever you want to uh, manage actually from here. Okay, so here you can see what I just displayed, what are the compliant and non-compliant policies. Next is blueprint, Azure blueprint. So a blueprint allows an engineer or an architect to sketch a project's design parameters. A blueprint enables cloud architects and central information technology groups to define a repeatable set of Azure resources that implement and adhere to the organization standards, pattern, and requirement. It can be reused to maintain consistency and compliance and also support using parameters. It helps the development team to rapidly build and deploy new environment with the knowledge that they are building within organization compliance. So what happens that some set of compliance is already defined, right? Some set of standards are defined for an organization. Based on that, few parameters are created and a blueprint is actually created based on those standards along with some parameters, right? So what it helps that you can use the same blueprint everywhere because it's already is adhering to the organizational standards. So you do not need to repetitively create again and again those set of things, right? So it will help the teams to rapidly build and deploy if you need some new environments. Okay, so this helps there, and it can also be versioned. So whatever changes you are doing in a blueprint, suppose some changes was there till today, you change something, so it can be versioned as well. And Azure policy is required to be configured for each new subscription, whereas blueprint you can define a repeatable set of governance tools and standard that your organization requires for multiple subscriptions. So if a question comes that for multiple subscription, which option you need to select, you can select blueprint and you can just reject the Azure policy one. So here also, if you go here, if you type blueprint, you need to create from here. You see some predefined rules that if your organization is adhered to ISO 27001. So you do not need to understand that whatever else you need to do, you just select it. Based on that, it will create the blueprint. Okay. So next way you can save some artifacts and those things, what location for which you will use this blueprint and just can do it, right? So in this way it helps. If you are using blueprint, you just need to understand those concepts. As of now for this exam, no in-depth knowledge is not required as of now. Maybe in future if you're working as a solution architect or administrator, so in that scenario you will need this thing in how to implement this in details. Okay, so these concepts are important. It's a blueprint. Okay, and now I will go through few of the things you need to understand if you're using Azure. So quickly I will go through things. These are all basically theoretical things. So Microsoft privacy statement. What is Microsoft privacy statement? It explains what personal data collects, how it is used, or for what purpose. So it covers all Microsoft services, websites, apps, software servers, defines everything. So if you want to look into it, you can check the privacy statement from here, that how they collect data and these things. So you can check that what Microsoft privacy statement actually do. Next is online services terms. So it's a legal agreement between Microsoft and the customer. The OST details the obligations by both parties with respect to processing and security of customer data and personal data. Specifically, it applies to Microsoft Online services that you license through a subscription, including Azure, Dynamics 365, Office 365, and Bing Max. So again, by using these links, you can visit this. Means just you need to understand, means exactly if you want to look into this set of things, on which page you need to go, right? So if you want to understand that what are the things you need to check for data processing and security between customer data and personal data, which set of section or which set of page you need to visit. Data protection addendum. So it defines the data processing and security terms for online services. Whatever the compliance with laws, disclosure of processed data, data security, including security practices and policies, data encryption, data access, customer responsibilities, everything you will be getting here. Okay, so by this you can just go through them if you want to look into it. But you need to understand data protection addendum. What is the functionality of this? It defines these things. Trust Center, it showcases Microsoft principles for maintaining data integrity in the cloud and how Microsoft implements and supports security, privacy, compliance, and transparency in all Microsoft cloud products and services. The Trust Center is an important part of the Microsoft Trusted Cloud initiative and provides support and resources for the legal and compliance community. So whenever some in-depth information about security, privacy, compliance, policy is required, you can visit this Trust Center. Okay. So you need to understand where you can visit. Okay. So here you can visit. Next is Azure compliance documentation. So here you will find compliance offerings across global, US government, financial services, health, media and manufacturing, regional. This type of compliance related things you will find here. Okay, everything is here. So it's Azure compliance documentation where you will get this. Next is Azure government. So there is one thing called Azure government. So it's basically a separate instance of the Microsoft Azure service, and it addresses the security and compliance need of US federal agencies, state and local governments, and their solution providers. And it uses physically isolated data centers and networks located only in the users. So it doesn't uses the normal set of data centers. It uses physically isolated data centers. So this is Azure government. It is separate from the normal users, whatever they use. Okay. And again, coming up another for China. So Azure China 21 ViaNet is operated by 21 ViaNet. So it's again a physically separated instance of cloud services located in China. It's independently operated and transacted by Shanghai Blue Cloud Technology Company Limited. So it's again Azure China is separate. It's not in coming under normal Azure what we are using. So it's a separate one. So if you want to go through the details, again you can check here. So what are the things available here? You need to understand know these terms actually. Means Azure China, Azure government. These things you need to know. This is one important thing. Total cost of ownership calculator. So see, let me directly go to this link. So total cost of ownership. So when you will be using it. So suppose you want to migrate your data from your on-premise to cloud. So you need to understand, right, how much cost you will be saving, right? So here you can see what type of servers you will specify here. Suppose some set of servers you are using here in your local. So this configuration server you are using, suppose this configuration of database you are using in your local. This is the storage. This is the network. Next, suppose you are assuming that your geo redundant storage is not required. Software assurance coverage is there. Electricity cost is this much. Storage cost is this much. These all you are incurring when you are using your private. So now you will see that how it will this cloud will save. So over 1 year, Microsoft, your estimated cost savings will be as like this. So in this way, you can understand how much savings you will get when you will be using Microsoft instead of cloud. So for 2 years, you can see 63. For 3 years, 71. 4 years. In this way, you can check, right? So in this way, you can check. You can see different graphs how your cost is getting saved whenever you are moving to cloud. In this way, you can check. Okay, so this is very important link actually. If you want to migrate from your on-premise to Azure, you can first check that how much savings you will get. Based on that, you can plan accordingly. Okay, so helps you estimate the cost savings of operating your solution of Azure over time. instead of in your on-premise data center. So you can enter your details of your on-premise workloads. Then based on that, you will be getting different cost related things. Okay. So the final is, I think here the service level agreement. You know that it's a formal agreement between a service company and the customer. So this agreement defines performance standard and Microsoft commits for you. So suppose you have SLA of 99.9999, suppose like that, you are not getting that. So it will not be then as per SLA. Okay. So a service credit is a under means suppose this is not met, then you can claim that, right? So service credit is the percentage of the fees you paid that are credited back to you according to the claim approval process for the time duration when the service is unavailable. So if it's in the service level agreement, if you're not getting that performance, you can claim for that. Okay, so some certain amount of time within time duration, you will get some amount of money back. Okay, so yeah, so that's what it. Have taken reference from Microsoft documentation, and yeah, so thank you. So it's finished. So if somebody have any questions, or if you want to get connected with me, this is my LinkedIn link, and I have started one YouTube channel. So as of now, I will be uploading few videos as well quickly. So this one you can check, Shodakundu Learning Hub. So that's it. So if somebody has any questions, they can ask.
Sir, I think there are no more queries as
Okay.
this means because I think you covered all the topics which are there in AZ-900 and went into the quite very depth of the topic. So I think there are no doubts from our audience side. So without any wastage of time, can we wrap up with the session?
Yeah, yeah, sure, sure.
So thank you very much everyone for joining us for this 3 days AZ-900 bootcamp. Okay, we have a question from someone. He's asking, sir, why we use hub and scope in virtual network? I think VNet.
Yeah, so see, what do you mean by hub, right? It's the central point of connectivity, right? So there should be somewhere as a central point where you will be going. Based on that, whatever the load balancing and those things happen, based on that, you will be moved to that scope, right? You understood, right? Means what I'm trying to say. Means first of all, it will be coming into a central place. Then from there, it will be means delegated to or forwarded to the spoke, means whoever the whatever main what I should say the exact term, uh, actually this scope means the final thing. So suppose there are some virtual machines, right? So if you are hitting to the means main thing, it's coming into load balancer or its application gateway. So from there it will be going to the final machine. So that way it is designed, right? It cannot directly go to each and every machine, right? So that's why uh, this architecture is used. Maybe you can go through details. I am not that much into the network side, so I will also check. Maybe you can connect me on LinkedIn. I can get back to you in details on this one.
I hope that it resolves the query asked by the participant. So I don't think there are any other queries remaining with us. So let's wrap up with the session. Thank you everyone for joining us for this 3 days long boot camp on AG900. And I hope our mentor was very well successful in explaining you with the basic semantics of Azure and its services. So, without any further delays, let's end this boot camp with a happy learning. And I would like to thank you, sir, for giving your precious time, your precious 3 days for our community folks and the personals who wanted to learn AZ-900. We surely look forward to host many other sessions with you regarding many
Yeah,
other
thank
advanced
you.
topics of Azure.
Yeah, thanks a lot. Thank you
Thank you, sir.
everybody for joining. Yeah,
Good night.
thank you. Good night.